Hello, this is Benjamin Fulford speaking on June 28th, 2024. There is an extremely intense power struggle going on right now, and the Khazarian mafia are literally fighting for their lives. Let's start with the situation in England. Princess Anne was attacked viciously and hospitalized on June 23rd. This is part of an attempt by the people using what is apparently a fake Charles to seize power in England. Now, Queen Elizabeth made it very clear that she wanted Princess Anne to act as regent for William's son George, and the attack on her is an attack on the British royal family by foreign German factions. And the person of interest, of course, is John Scarlett, the former head of MI6. He is being actively hunted because he is a mass murderer and he is trying to overthrow the British monarchy. Now, another thing we need to make very clear, Princess Anne is under the protection of the Dragon family. That means that if anything happens to her, the people responsible and 12 generations of their family will be hunted down and killed. That's what the Dragon family does. So stay away from Princess Anne and stay away from the British royals. Anyone who are found guilty in a court of law of torturing and murdering children, then that protection will be removed. Until then, hands off to British royals. Now, what they're trying to do with this Charles business is clearly a power struggle that is also involving Japan. The Japanese emperor is now in England for a visit. I noticed he was not invited to have dinner at number 10 Downing Street, so it's not actually an official Japanese government visit to the U.S. government or to the U.K. government. And I suspect that they are blackmailing the Japanese royals over their involvement in the murder of 500,000 Japanese people with vaccines. If they're not involved, then the Japanese emperor needs to have a press conference where he denounces the murder of 500,000 Japanese with vaccines. Otherwise, he'll be considered guilty, and it doesn't matter if he's emperor. He will be removed. Now, and the other thing, of course, is Keir Starmer. We mentioned this before, the Labour leader, the election's coming up on July 7th. He is being blackmailed over participation in the torture and murder of Madeleine McCann. He's a compromised individual. If he becomes prime minister, he is going to reverse Brexit and hand over control of England to the German Nazi faction, which is really something that the British people don't want. And let me explain why. The German whistleblower, an engineer who was involved in creating tunnels and underground shelters throughout Germany, says that they have built underground shelters for at least 2 million people, and that all these underground shelters have mosques but no churches. And this whistleblower, and I'll publish more about this on Monday, says the plan is to kill 15 million Germans. This would be what they call the non-productive people, i.e. Old people, people with disabilities, anyone that I think is not fit to feed the machine. So this plan was originally intended for 2016-17, but was delayed when Hillary Clinton Hitler was defeated in the election there, but they're now still trying to activate it. So we now know why they brought in all these military-aged Muslim men. And of course, this brings us to Barack Hussein Obama Hitler, who is behind this fake Biden regime and who's bringing in all the military age foreign mails into the United States as well. So we can assume they have a similar plan there. They're trying to use foreigners to seize power in Europe and North America and kill patriots. This is a war, folks. This is literally a fight to the death. These people know that if they're exposed for mass murder and torture, especially of children, they're doomed. So they're fighting viciously and hard. And we have to fight harder and use necessary force to permanently subdue these people and bring them to justice. Now, another thing that's crossed my radar is I noticed that a so-called Julian Assange is apparently being released from prison and sent to Australia. This is what I know about Julian Assange. When he was at the Ecuadorian embassy in London, he appeared every day on the balcony of the embassy. Then Pamela Anderson went to visit him, brought him a birthday cake, which contained a poison, and he died. He stopped appearing on the balcony. Later, they pretended that he was taken from the embassy and put in the UK prison system, but I sent people physically to go to the courtrooms where supposedly Assange was facing trial. He never appeared in person. So the story being put out by the White Hats is that the Assange who was killed was a body double, and now they've got the real Assange. Now, I'm going to cut these people a bit of slack because I noticed that, for example, the New York Times and other Khazarian Mafia-controlled media are not mentioning this whole Assange business. So let's see how this goes, but it looks like it might be a white hat operation to use a new Assange to release information about pedophiles, etc. So let's see how this goes. But I have to admit, I'm a bit cynical. So we're going to have to see what's going on there a bit more. Now, I also saw a few clips from the so-called Trump-Biden debate, and we know this is fake because they didn't let Robert F. Kennedy Jr. participate, even though the court ruled he should. And the whole thing was done in a studio somewhere, hidden from public view. However, whoever is managing that clearly made the Biden stumble and fumble and bumble. So we're assuming they're winding down that whole operation. But unless you get Obama and Hillary Clinton Rockefeller and all the other Rockefellers behind that removed from the system, the United States is still going to be going towards anarchy. We notice, for example, now in Chicago, more than 50% of emergency calls to 911 are not being answered. So even if you're being robbed at gunpoint, assaulted, murdered, you've got a more 50% chance no police will respond. That's how bad it is. And it is definitely caused by these illegal immigrants. That's a statistical fact. So there is a complete social breakdown. Let me see a couple of things after there. All right. Another point I want to look at is Netanyahu, Benjamin Netanyahu. We noticed that the Israeli Supreme Court has ruled that Orthodox Jews have to attend military service, which means they were going to remove support for his government. I have preliminary reports that Netanyahu has been arrested by Israeli police. I think by now most Israelis who are even slightly aware know that he engineered the whole October 7th thing to create a military emergency to stay in power, and it's blowing up in his face. Hopefully he'll be gone soon. Now, the other thing we're seeing is, of course, some sort of change in the Ukraine. We now have both President Macron of France, who's on his way out, and Chancellor Scholz of Germany saying NATO is not going to help or not going to get involved in Ukraine. So that show is winding down as well. Here in Japan, there's also a very serious power struggle going on, and I'm not being told much about it because it's, an ongoing operation. We don't want to tip our hand, but clearly the Japanese underworld and military and intelligence people know that the current government was involved in the murder of 500,000 Japanese citizens with vaccines, and a huge cleanup operation is underway. We're expecting something similar in Canada, and in the United States, we noticed that 5 states are now suing Pfizer for the vaccine damage. That's the start. Now, the Khazarian mafia, of course, they're also desperately trying to start World War III. They are attacking civilians in Russia with cluster munitions to try to provoke Russia to start World War III, but the Russians understand it and are not taking the bait. We saw a similar provocation with phosphorus weapons, illegal ones fired on Lebanon. It's not going to work, okay? They're not going to start World War III and get out of jail for free. Now, the other thing they're doing is we're seeing huge cyber attacks on the Federal Reserve Board, supposedly, and automobile dealerships, many other places. This is definitely a World Economic Forum run operation. The other thing we're seeing is the Russians are now informing us that after the biolabs were shut down in Ukraine and the ones in Japan and Taiwan were also shut down, they've now set them up in Africa, and they're still pushing monkeypox and bird flu. So, we need to find and locate Bill Gates and hunt, and Burla of Pfizer, all these people. They need to be hunted down because they're still trying to murder us. So again, we're in the middle of a very serious fight. And the other thing I guess I should talk about is the North Koreans have been in constant contact. They're getting very, very close to going on the warpath, and they're going to be sending troops to Ukraine and possibly moving into South Korea unless something happens before then. We're trying to convince them that the Korean Peninsula can be unified peacefully and there's no need for a war, but now that they have nuclear weapons, they don't have to worry about U.S. nuclear blackmail. They're going to make a move, but I believe the Korean people will decide by themselves to reunify without the need for fighting each other, which is what external forces want. So there's a lot going on, and we're in the middle of a serious fight. That's why I'm not going to Canada this year, because the battle is just too intense. I can't take a break at this point. But I guarantee you the White Hats will win this. And I know each year I talk about an autumn offensive. Well, this year it's a summer offensive. Hopefully we could finally end it this year, but we'll keep fighting as long as it's necessary. But we will win. Humanity will be liberated from this satanic cabal. Okay, well, that's what I have to say for myself today. Now I'd like to answer questions from readers and viewers.
Hi, Ben. We have our first question for today. Says Benjamin, I read again over 5 years of your reports, and with the most recent one, it seems it is 1 step forward, 2 steps back. What is really happening? Are the White Hats for real, or are they just theater and nothing happens because the cabal seems about to break the world? And now with the Assange liberation, what is really happening, as Obama/Biden would have never released it? Who did it?
Like I've said before, it is a war, and there are 2 sides. We think we're going to win, and then they have their Battle of the Bulge counteroffensive. We're dealing with people who've been in power for literally thousands of years. They're extremely intelligent, and they're very entrenched at the top levels of most Western governments. So it hasn't been as easy as I'd hoped, and I keep thinking it's going to happen, and then they keep coming up with some other dirty trick. But definitely, this is the weakest I've seen them since the time of the Lehman crisis. The Lehman crisis, what happened was they fooled the Asian secret societies with a black communist Obama, and they got money to keep their show going on for another more than a decade, $23 trillion. And they also did Fukushima to scare the Japanese government back into submission. So that set us back enormously, but that's all being reversed now. And the Asian secret societies understand they were fooled by Obama. They're not going to provide any more money. And if you look at the macroeconomic situation in terms of real physical goods and trade, you'll see that the Khazarian mafia controlled countries are being cut off. They're going bankrupt. And that's why you're having hyperinflation in the US and shortages. So, and the banking system is basically insolvent. So hopefully this time we really will be able to finish it, but it's not over until it's over. I know I've been over optimistic, but this is the strongest I've seen the white hats in the 20 years I've been in this war. Now, the Assange thing, I believe I mentioned in my talk, it looks like a white hat operation. Now let's see how it plays. Let's see what they reveal. If he starts talking about adrenochrome and mass murder of children, then we'll know this is a white hat operation. So let's see what happens with Assange. Next question.
Hi, Ben. Recently, there's been news about a flesh-eating bacteria spreading throughout Japan that apparently has a death rate of around 70%. Have you heard of this? And is this the next bioengineered weapon to fearmonger the sheep?
My understanding of this, and a friend of mine got it and nearly had his leg amputated, but it's usually you catch it if you have a scratch or a cut and you go to a hot spring. It seems to like water. But despite all the fear mongering, it's maybe hit 1,000 people and it can be cured with antibiotics. I don't think it has that 70% death rate. That's just fear mongering. It is something of concern, but it's not a big thing. It's not a huge, a lot of people aren't getting it. I think it's more fear mongering than anything else, but there is something and it can be cured with antibiotics. That's what I know about that. Next question.
Hi, Ben. You do mention that there is a power struggle happening in different places. For what reason are the white hats not eliminating these bad actors? Surely the time for walking on eggshells is over.
I keep asking that question myself, and apparently, basically what we're dealing with is a lot of blackmailed people at the top levels of power. They always seem to control the number 1, 2, 3 people, and it's been structured for so long that you cannot become a prime minister or the head of the military unless they have blackmail on you. This is why it's taking so long, and it's only going to be solved by middle-ranking people pushing up, people who haven't accepted the bribes, who aren't being blackmailed, and the military needs to immediately go through all its staff and fire any general who's got money they can't account for because they've been bribed. But basically, the problem is that the corruption was concentrated at the top and everybody else is used to obeying orders. So this is why it's taking so long. But definitely, though, we have reached a turning point and it will become more and more obvious. It's already, obvious to a lot of us that, for example, most people now understand Biden is a fake and somebody is making him act incredibly stupid as a means to wake people up. So it's taking a long time, but we're getting there. And again, the problem is it's at the top of the power structure that the corruption is most intense and the blackmail is most intense. And that's why it's taking so long. Next question.
Hi, Ben. It's great that there may be a jubilee, but I wonder how it would be equitable for those who bucked the system by avoiding debt. Those who are out of debt had to fight harder against the debt system, thereby hurting the KM. To be in debt helped promote and finance their agenda. It seems that those who are in debt and would receive full debt forgiveness have a huge advantage over those who refuse to play their game. Recent economic metrics show that most millionaires can no longer afford their debt, yet a jubilee would relieve them and allow them to maintain their assets that they did not earn. It seems that someone who avoided debt will be punished from a jubilee, as the outcome would advance the debtor's financial status. while those not in debt would not benefit and would not gain?
Yeah, I keep getting this question in different forms, and I fully agree that people who don't have debt or who pay down their mortgage and own their house free and clear need to be given some extra uh, advantage over people who just have their debt canceled. So the details are still going to be worked out, but it's going to be done in such a way that people who did not have debt will get an extra benefit. Uh, Again, there's going to be a lot of public debate, and it's going to take a lot of input from a lot of people before we come up with the final, plan for this. But uh, all that is being taken into account. We don't want to punish people who were thrifty and worked hard and didn't get in debt. We want to make sure they are rewarded. But at the same time, as I keep repeating, what's really going on is what we're doing is we're returning money that was stolen from the people via central bank fraud, which is involved creating money out of nothing and then putting everyone into debt and creating a system of Babylonian debt slavery. So we want to end that. But at the same time, we want to make sure the people who avoided Babylonian debt slavery come out stronger at the end of the process. So the details will be worked out in public on a bottom-up basis. So be patient, but all this will be taken into account. Okay, well, that's what I have to say for my. Oh, do you have any more questions?
Yeah, we had one last question
Sure.
related again to pandemic-like illness. It says, "Hi Ben, here in Australia, we have just had a so-called bird flu infection, and 250,000 chickens have just been culled at one farm alone. Do you know what the agenda is behind all this? Is it just to create food shortages, or is there some other sinister plan to create another fake pandemic? Also, Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah said this week that if the Israeli military goes to war in Lebanon, his group will use its rockets and drones to hit targets across the entire territory of Israel. He warned Hezbollah would wage a war with no restraint, no rules, and no ceilings. Do you think the IDF will start a war in Lebanon?"
All right, the first question. Clearly, this bird flu and monkeypox thing we're seeing was planned long in advance. My understanding is that they were hoping to pass the WHO pandemic treaty, which would give them dictator-like powers in the event of a pandemic. And then they were going to create this pandemic in order to give these people the excuse to grab power. Now, the WHO treaty failed, and we have identified Bill Gates in specific as financing the creation of bird flu that attacks humans and mammals. So he needs to be brought to justice. So they are, going according to an old playbook, but I understand it's not going to work. There's not going to be a big bird flu pandemic. These people are being brought to justice. Now, as far as Israel is concerned, they are, still messianic fanatics there who think that they have to provoke Armageddon in order to bring on their so-called Messiah. And these people are not susceptible to logic or reason. They need to be removed from all power in Israel. So any attempt to provoke Lebanon would be suicide for Israel, and I think the Israeli military and intelligence establishment understand that. My own view is at the end of the day, Israel will be replaced with Judea, and the original Judeans and the European immigrants will live together in peace with equal rights. That's my view of what's going to happen. And at such a point, they'll be able to rebuild their temple. But what they must not do is follow those people who want to lead Israel into suicide. Okay, well, that's what I have to say for myself this week, and I hope to see you next week with better news.